If you've ever rolled up to the candy aisle just in time for Halloween, only to find your favorite, the Holy Twix, totally out of stock, you've experienced a shortage of an item you wanted. And perhaps in their place, you've found a surplus of Tootsie Rolls, the obvious rejects of the candy community. Meaning there are more bags on the shelves than an army of ghouls or goblins could possibly consume. You've also probably seen how the stores ultimately get rid of these extras, slashing prices until they find buyers who are willing to stock up on mediocre wax meets chocolate morsels. See, much like trick-or-treating on an icy sidewalk, economics is all about balance. Balancing a budget, balancing your needs with your resources, and importantly, balancing supply and demand. Both shortages and surpluses shift away from the golden ideal of economic balance. And it's up to the markets themselves to catch things before it all tumbles down. Hi, I'm Matt Sofa, and this is Study Hall, Macroeconomics. Last episode, we discussed how demand, or how much consumers want to purchase, and supply, how much producers want to offer for sale, work in opposition. Quantity demanded decreases when prices rise because who wants to spend more for the same item? While quantity supplied increases with businesses looking to make more profit. The reverse is true too. When prices drop, firms may produce less, but demand from customers looking for a good deal will rise. And while the laws of supply and demand seem contradictory, they work together to strike the perfect balance of market equilibrium. The price where the amount supplied elegantly matches the amount demanded by consumers. So there's always a Twix when you need one and the Tootsie Rolls don't overwhelm the shelves. On a graph of supply and demand curves, X marks the spot and market equilibrium is the place where they meet. Like, if Tiffany's temporary tattoos is down to make 30 temporary tattoos to be sold at her friend's birthday party for $1.50 a piece, and exactly 30 people are down to buy tattoos at that same price, nobody is left empty-handed or blank bicep. And no tattoos stay sitting on the shelf, which would lose Tiffany money. Tiffany struck the perfect market equilibrium balance, with $1.50 as the market clearing price, the price at which everything is sold and market equilibrium is achieved. Suppliers really want to hit this point, not only as a way to satisfy their customers, but because they lose out on profits for every unsold good they have to haul home, as well as all the goods they could have sold if they hadn't sold out too early. But since economics is all about explaining relationships in general and not just tattoo specific, economists have some useful notation for when we're not dealing with actual numbers or examples. The initial demand curve, or quantity demanded at all possible prices, is called D1, not to be confused with the boy band 1D. Then, same thing for the initial quantity supplied at all possible prices, S1. At the point of equilibrium where they cross, we have both a P1 price and a Q1 quantity. That point represents a particular quantity, like 30 tattoos, and a particular price, like $1.50. But by naming those numbers Q1 and P1, we could show the general principles without getting into the messy details. That way, we can apply it to all kinds of products and industries in our sprawling, complicated economy. But market equilibrium, like my impressive stack of shoeboxes at the top of my closet, is precarious, and that balance can't last forever. When either supply or demand shifts, the market clearing price does too. And suddenly that old point of market equilibrium isn't so equal. Since the economy is so big and clunky, it takes a minute to settle back into market equilibrium. And in the meantime, people are stuck with surpluses and shortages. Surpluses, or overproduction relative to demand, happen when fewer people want to buy a thing at a given price point than they were before. Generally, they're held in check by the market through the desire for suppliers to waste as little money as possible, known as the profit motive. You don't make any money on stuff you don't sell. In fact, you lose money you already put in to produce it in the first place. So, cutting prices helps meet buyers at the new point of equilibrium, the price point where those demanders are willing to buy up stock. Cutting prices to sell off a surplus makes some profit, and even if it's at a lower price. And thus, thanks to the market's self-regulation, a new equilibrium is born. Shortages, or too few goods available relative to demand at a given price point, don't last forever either. By raising prices, suppliers cut out some demanders who can't or won't pay the new amount. And the suppliers get to rake in more money than they would have if they'd left their prices the same. Take the great toilet paper shortage of early 2020. Thanks to the COVID-19 pandemic and the resulting panic buying by consumers, tons of shelves at stores around the world were cleared out of essentials. And toilet paper is definitely essential. To take advantage of increased demand, the price of a 36-roll pack of TP on Amazon increased by nearly $80, from $30.95 to $109.99. Suddenly, stockpiling hundreds of rolls in your basement was a real financial investment, meaning fewer people were willing to buy up whole shelves worth, decreasing demand and leveling out the number of rolls left in stock. Or consider a spicier example, sriracha, or as I call it, pass the Tums. The demand for this particular hot sauce has been sky high for over a decade. In 2009, the magazine Bon Appetit named it the ingredient of the year. But then, tragedy struck. Due to bad chili farming seasons in both 2020 and 2022, Hui Fong Foods, the company that makes sriracha, had to tell its customers that there wasn't enough sriracha to go around. The whole sriracha supply curve shifted to the left, meaning the new equilibrium price point was at a much higher price. Sriracha, which usually costs around $10 per bottle, was suddenly being sold for a whopping $40 at grocery stores, and even more from third-party sellers online. Check out Matt's mega resale eBay emporium for definitely not overpriced hot sauce. During the shortage, the supply curve shifted to the left to show that the supply of sriracha decreased at all possible price points. This new supply curve is named S2, so we can compare it to the original supply curve, S1. And the intersection of S2 supply and demand is your new point of market equilibrium. But it's not like these new curves are forever and always. The market forces might change as days of better chili farming dawn and everyone's favorite rooster is back on the shelves, and equilibrium shifts again. Lucky for us, we can add in multiple supply and demand curves to reflect different economic scenarios, using arrows to show how they'll shift. But obviously enough shifts on the same graph eventually becomes graph soup. And I prefer chicken noodle. And we know there are tons of things that can shift supply and demand, or both, so things can get messy fast. Like, if there's a huge recall of lettuce, reducing the supply available, right at the same time a complementary product bought with lettuce, Matt's Magic Barbecue Blue Cheese Salad Dressing, starts a big advertising campaign featuring none other than the host of Study Hall Macroeconomics himself. The recall means lettuce supply will drop, just as demand would normally rise thanks to the higher demand of a complementary good. So, thanks to the shortage, the price of a head is going to rise and the total heads available is going to fall. Lettuce heads, obviously. Add to that, there are a bunch of new people interested in buying lettuce, driving up demand. Barbecue enthusiasts, blue cheese connoisseurs, and Matt Sofa fanboys. And don't even think about telling them to swap out for a substitute product like spinach or arugula. Everybody knows lettuce is the superior vehicle for dressing. So on top of a shortage in the lettuce supply, S2, there's an increase in the lettuce demand, D2, and price goes up more than if only supply or demand alone were shifting. But the novelty of salad dressing is, only so novel. The demand for lettuce probably isn't going to permanently increase because I bottled some barbecue blue cheese and partnered with a great marketing team. So demand is likely to shift again, which we can indicate with yet another demand curve, D3. Simultaneously, once the lettuce recall ends, supply will go back up, QS3. When demand dips and supply increases, we'll move to yet another equilibrium point, the price P3 and quantity Q3, where supply and demand meet. And if it comes out that my Magic Barbecue Blue Cheese Salad Dressing contains neither barbecue sauce nor blue cheese, but rather a cocktail of semi-toxic chemicals, while new technology makes lettuce growing cheaper, faster, and easier, supply and demand will shift yet again, and it's equilibrium take 4, and so on and so forth. Of course, part of the challenge of economics is that sometimes people don't always act like we expect them to. Self-interest and a profit motive aren't always what drives people to make decisions. Once in a while, glimmers of actual generosity come through, messing up the whole system. Like, if out of the goodness of their hearts, the sriracha bottlers decided to cap their prices to keep them low even in the face of a shortage, to not price out their broke but loyal customers. Or if die-hard study hall fans keep buying salad dressings even after the FDA deems it unsafe for human consumption, just to show their support for their favorite YouTube host. But more often than not, that's not how it goes down. A market economy assumes people are kind of greedy, and unfortunately, that assumption is usually right on the money. For businesses, that means selling at the highest price that they can maximize profit. And for consumers, it's spending as little as possible to save more for future use. And in that case, supply and demand will push one another to a new place of balance, or market equilibrium. Market equilibrium is a delicate balance. shifting in tiny ways every single day depending on changes in supply, demand, or both. Like a hyperactive toddler, it's always on the move. And like a dutiful helicopter parent, consumers, producers, and economists keep a watchful eye on the market forces affecting supply and demand. Showing these shifts on a graph helps us recognize why prices can jump around and appreciate the free market's regulatory forces that push prices and quantities towards market equilibrium. Knowing how our economy regulates itself and being able to demonstrate it graphically will help you on your econ final, and when you're called in front of Joseph McCarthy in the House Un-American Activities Committee. But beyond that, an understanding of market equilibrium gives us a glimpse into the philosophy of our economic system. An expectation that the laws of supply and demand will hold true and humans will behave in a way to maximize profit and minimize cost. And while people don't always follow the money at the expense of others, grasping at exactly why market equilibrium works gives us an insight into not only why our economic system succeeds, but human behavior in general. If you're enjoying this series and are interested in taking the full Study Hall Macroeconomics course and earning college credit from ASU, check out gostudyhall.com or click on the button to learn more. And if you want to help us out, give this video a like, comment, and smash that subscribe button. Thanks for watching. See you next time.